Welcome into a new edition, a winning edition, the Going Deep Buffalo podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Massare, here with Kevin Siracuse to break down not only a Lions W, we got a Patriots matchup that's just, believe it or not, just as important as the Lions game, whether it doesn't feel like it or not. They matter the same at this point. And we got a couple more topics to talk about. Can the Bills achieve the 1 seed? There are plenty of things we're going to want to go over here today. Most importantly, we're back. We're here. The Bills are thriving. They're number one in most teams' power rankings, most people's power rankings. So that's cool to see. Analytics look good. They're aggressive on fourth down. Josh Allen's the MVP, minus 900 right now to be the MVP. There's player of the week for the 8th time. There's so many topics going on. Kevin, how you doing today?
Good, Kevin. Like you said, the Bills came off of a huge win Sunday in Detroit. And the Lions were a team that a lot of people, myself included, I thought that they were the best team in the NFL to a certain point, but they are just so injury-riddled right now. They have 21 players on their injured reserve list, so I feel really bad for them, being a Rust-Belt brother, sharing the other side of the Great Lakes. I do support the Lions, especially because they are in the NFC, so I was kind of looking forward to the possibility of a Buffalo-Detroit Super Bowl, and it could still happen, but man, just the injuries that came out of that game. Now, even David Montgomery, a guy that we talked about a lot on the show last week, sprained MCL. He's done. We all know about Aiden Hutchinson. Their linebackers, defensive backs, they are banged up. But luckily, on the flip side, the Bills only have 3 players on injured reserve. And I think they might be able to get some rest. And we'll talk about that coming up tonight on this episode of the Going Deep Buffalo show.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to approach this upcoming game, and we're going to have a great guest on right at 9 o'clock, so that'll be fun. We'll break down some Patriots talk, what's going on with them, what they're looking for, what's going on in the draft, how they're feeling, so we'll get their pulse. And I know it's not as exciting as the Lions game, but truthfully, it does matter just as much. It matters as much as the Rams game. It matters as much as the Jets game next week, so they do matter the same. So we're going to break that down, see what could happen. Talk about the Patriots' last ranked offensive line. There's a lot of talking points that we're going to be able to get to at the top of the hour. But first, I'm going to take some time to go over the Lions game real quick. Ultimately, the Bills were up 3 scores throughout the majority of this game, at points of this game, after an Amon-Ra St. Brown fumble. The Bills really took a commanding position. They stopped the run. One thing the Bills have been good at is when they focus on stopping the run, they stop the run. And they're the only team to hold the Lions under 100 total rushing yards. And a lot of people can say, well, yeah, they were up big and they had to throw, but the reason they were up big was because they stopped the run. And they were one-dimensional for the majority of the day. So the Bills stopping the run was a huge thing that they're going to be able to put on film. And that's without missing their safety core, Rasul Douglas. The Bills weren't coming in overly, defensively wise, overly healthy. On the offensive side of the ball, obviously the Bills are back, and this is what happens with a full-strength Bills team. Dalton Kincaid adds some juice. Dawson Knox should have had a touchdown, called back from a bogus holding call, and all the Bills' weapons. So the Bills are in great spirits with what they're able to do offensively. Offensive line still top 5 in the league. So the Bills' offense is roaring on our cylinders. Lots of debates that they are the number one offense based on a lot of metrics. Josh Allen's number 1 in a lot of metrics. So it's really cool to see Joe Brady getting tenure, maybe getting shorter here. I personally thought he was going to get next year, but I'm not so sure. And it depends how far the Bills go. I'm truly not so sure anymore that I believe he could be 1.5 and done. That's we can bring that up on maybe a couple weeks show from now, but it does look like he may be 1.5 and done. So there's a lot of impressive things that come out of this Lions game. The Bills score again over 30 points, blow that out of the water. They're scoring at over 90 points right now over the 2 games. It's just things that if they can keep that up, you'd like to see a little bit better points-wise defense, but ultimately the Bills did what they needed to do, Kevin.
Yeah, they did. And it's crazy. Speaking about Joe Brady, it is absolutely insane that this team put up 48 points and had 559 yards of total offense. And Amari Cooper, the wide receiver 1, I know everyone eats in this offense, but just based on the depth chart, you would like to think that Amari Cooper is the wide receiver 1 on this team. He had 14 targets the week prior in Los Angeles, 0 targets this past week in Detroit. And they did that on offense. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's tough to really pinpoint with the Bill. Ty Johnson took all of his yards. Yeah. It's just really tough to pinpoint against man coverage what the Bills are going to do. They ran a true 3-back formation in this game. I mean, really almost an even split between carries or between snaps, 29 snaps for Cook, 21 for Johnson, and 18 for Ray Davis, 12 for Reggie Gilliam. So they were really spreading the snaps around there. And I mean, same thing at the receiving position. I mean, Curtis Samuel only played 19. Cooper only played 32. But you saw Keon Coleman basically come back to a full complement of 44 snaps. Shakir, 41 snaps. Matt Collins, 35. They just love Matt Collins. There's just no way they're going to steal any more snaps from him. He plays 50% of the snaps right now. And that's low for him. He's traditionally been around 60 to 70% of the snaps. That's just where they're going to keep him. He's productive. He does what he needs to do. I mean, he's just a prototypical, not in stature, but prototypical receiver 3, receiver 4 for the Bills. I mean, that's what they're looking for. And he's absolutely supplanted Curtis Samuel for any type of production in snaps. Like, he just does too much to take off the field and to use Samuel too much. And Samuel got hurt twice in this game. Just an ongoing issue with Curtis Samuel. I don't know. He's a 15 to 20 snap guy per game. And he just hasn't been overly productive in that. So I think it's time to just consider him a backup receiver at this point, especially with Matt Collins taking those snaps. But you look through everything, you saw a lot of, 12 personnel. You had Dawson Knox, 51 snaps, Dalton Kincaid, 34 snaps coming off of his injury, playing 50% of the snaps himself. I mean, you got to like what you see from the Bills tight. I mean, the Bills can come at you from 3 running backs, 2 tight ends, 4 receivers, Kevin.
Yeah, they really can. And you already touched on this, but the fact that Ty Johnson was a leading receiver with 114 yards, that just shows the separation. And the stat that I had about Amari Cooper, and they didn't even miss a beat. So you might look at that and say, well, come on, Amari Cooper is supposed to be getting his targets. What if it's a game when you need Cooper to step up? But I'm looking at it from the other perspective. It's glass half full, where it's like you can do that to a team like Detroit. Your offense can look that dynamic and your wide receiver 1 can be silent. Like, what is the ceiling for this team?
Yeah. And I mean, Coleman with a nice big deep catch. I mean, I wouldn't have assumed he played 63% of the snaps, actually led receivers again. When Keon Coleman's healthy, he plays a lot of snaps. Like, he never plays under 64% ever. So he is, quite frankly, he's receiver 1 in snap count, which is very interesting. So that's like a pretty interesting nugget that he gets more snaps than Shakir pretty frequently, more than Cooper, more than Matt Collins. I mean, he's what the Bills wanted. He's truly what the Bills want in a receiver 1, making a nice play, nice adjustment down the right sideline on a very similar dime that Josh Allen threw to Stephon Diggs in the playoffs. So ultimately, he's going to be able to come down with that. I know that was his only play of the day, but just the game flow, he wasn't overly needed in situations. I mean, the Bills were able to move the ball at will wherever they wanted. The running backs out of the backfield, like, there just wasn't an over need for receiving. I mean, even Khalil Shakir had his 1-yard touchdown catch, but ultimately there wasn't a huge need at receiver just in this game plan. So ultimately, the Bills wanted to attack the Lions with running backs and tight ends. That worked. They were, the Lions felt like they could at least have a handle on the Bills receiving core, and they let them. Ultimately, the Bills were dominating everywhere else across the field, and they were really in great shape. Ultimately, when you look on the defensive side of the ball, though, okay, is there anything else you want to say about the Bills offense?
Yeah, I mean, what they tweeted, the Bills PR department, I still cannot get over these, because it is just loaded up here with mind-boggling stats from an individual perspective, from a team perspective, and from a historical perspective too. I mean, all the accolades that come out with Josh Allen, where it's like Josh Allen is the first player in NFL history to do this. Josh Allen is the first player in NFL history to do that. I mean, look at this one. Record multiple touchdowns, multiple passing touchdowns, multiple rushing touchdowns, 350 plus passing yards, 60 plus rushing yards. He has 64 rushing touchdowns right now all time, which is only 1 behind Thurman Thomas for the most in Bills history. What was the other one? He's the first quarterback in NFL history to have 35 total touchdowns in 5 straight seasons. It's very likely that he can get 40 again, which is just almost unprecedented. You look at Ty Johnson here. We already talked about him. He surpassed 100 receiving yards, which is the most by a Bills running back since Fred Jackson in 2010. James Cook had 2 rushing touchdowns. He has 13 on the season now. So he's having a very, very nice year. You look over to the right there, Sean McDermott. 5 straight 11-win seasons. So, there's a lot of discourse about Sean McDermott, whether he's a good coach, whether he's a great coach, whether he, is there an expiration date, I guess is how I'll say it, with McDermott, with his late game blunders. But I mean, the facts speak for themselves right there. And the fact that he's won 11 plus games in 5 straight seasons, the only other coaches to do that were Tom Landry, Tony Dungy, Bill Belichick, and Andy Reid. So that's some very, very good company right there. And I mentioned the team stats. I mean, Buffalo became the 5th team all-time to score 30 points in 8 straight games. The Bills scored 40-plus points in consecutive games for just a 3rd time in team history. And then the last one there, they had a running back that rushed for over 100 and a running back that received over 100 yards. It's just crazy because week after week, we are seeing these numbers and stats come out, and it's like, how can they keep topping themselves? And Josh Allen keeps finding a way to one-up himself, and because of that, you are seeing him rise even more so in the MVP rankings.
Yeah, and I mean, Ty Johnson is a player that presents a lot of difficulties. Like, he is tough to cover. He's a really good receiver out of the backfield. He pass blocks. He is, quite frankly, just what you're looking for from a running back 2 that the Bills have pegged as a running back, I guess 3, but really is in a 2A, 2B with Ray Davis. So ultimately, I don't think either of them are running back 3. They do a timeshare based on game flow, based on certain situations. I mean, the Bills have a 3-headed horse that can do so many different things, and it's dynamic. And the Bills are going to be able. The best part about this, to cap off the offense, the Bills are going to be able to bring back this exact offense. Well, they see what happens with Brady. This exact offense next year. So that should be very encouraging. I mean, the whole offensive line returns, the tight ends. Dawson Knox is just way bad. I just don't want to hear any Dawson Knox slander. The guy is a good football player. He has great rapport with Josh Allen. He gets open on scramble drills. On the chest pass, it should have been a touchdown. Was robbed from him. Dawson
Knox,
Kincaid,
by the way.
That win open in the end zone
with the chest pass, yeah.
Oh, okay. But ultimately, like, he's been such a good football player for this roster that especially when Kincaid went down, that I know that his cap number is a little bit higher than people like. He's developed into a great blocker. Blocking tight ends make a lot of money in this league. We see tight ends all the time come out a little bit later. He's had some good years. You saw Jonnu Smith become a really good top 5 tight end right now. I mean, it just happens. He's a good tight end. The Bills in 12 personnel, as you saw for the first time with their tight ends being back, they're just dominant. They're hard to cover. They block really well out of it. Ultimately, I don't, just like we talked about McDermott and others. Matt Collins had a little slander earlier this year. The Knox slander, it's just not warranted. Like, I ideally would like his number to be a little lower too, but ultimately I think him and Kincaid as a combo, especially if one has to go out, it's just too valuable, in my opinion, to have guys that really are 2 top 20 tight ends. So I like to see he needs to get his credit this season. So ultimately, Dawson Knox is a player that doesn't get enough credit, and hopefully this year people will start to see that he has value beyond just 4,000 yards receiving and 40 million touchdowns. So I think that people are starting to see the value that Dawson Knox continues to bring inside the locker room with Josh Allen, blocking and receiving, and what he can do down the field. So he just has developed into a complete tight end. So he's definitely somebody that has received plenty of his fair share of people want to cut him, save money. I mean, look, the Bills are too valuable. They're going to run this offense back. I think that everybody should stay based on what they're going to do with Brady and based on what happens with Cooper. So going to the defense real quick before we talk Patriots, Kevin, give me are you worried with the back-to-back performances? I think the Bills defense played a lot better than the points allowed shows. They've stopped the run to basically make them one-dimensional. It was like really an interception that Terrell Bernard probably makes 9 out of 10 times through his hands to Amon-Ra St. Brown, away from being a much different outcome. That was just a ridiculous. Amon-Ra St. Brown was triple covered, and Jared Goff threw a perfect pass to beat triple coverage and through Terrell Bernard's hands, which was an amazing still shot. If you have seen it, it was quite frankly one that Bernard has made, and he was in great coverage. But ultimately, I thought the Bills defense played really well. They were trying to run clock out. There was never really, except for the very last minute of the onside kick, there was never really a moment you thought they could lose that game. The Bills were just too good on offense. But what's your opinion real quickly on the Bills defense?
I thought they played a great game, and to your point, the numbers don't really show that. And maybe this is case in point about how you need to look a little bit further than the box score stats sometimes, and that's why you favor DVOA. Because if you look at the box score here, I mean, the Bills gave up more than 40 points for the second week in a row. Detroit had 521 total yards, 473 passing yards, but a lot of that was because the Bills had that nice cushion and they were playing prevent defense, and they did suffer some injuries before and throughout the game as well. They were very banged up on that back end. So I feel like a lot of the Bills' defensive philosophy was just keep it in front. You can get your yards, but we don't need to necessarily force the issue, right? Like this isn't a 17-17 game. The Bills were up. What was the score at one point? It was like 35-14. So naturally, when you have a potent offense like that, Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown are going to get their numbers. So I really wasn't too worried about it. But then at the end, you see it kind of balloon and you're like, 500 total yards again, 42 points. I think that if the stakes were higher, considering the outcome of that game, I mean, the stakes were high with the game itself. But I think if it was more of a pressure intense situation, if it was back and forth in the fourth quarter, I think the Bills defense would have tightened up and McDermott would have made the right calls.
Yeah, I think for me, ultimately, it comes down to, like I said, the way I referenced that one play was because that was a big play. And ultimately, it was really good coverage and should have been an interception to like kind of end the game at that point. But instead, it went to an Amon-Ra St. Brown touchdown, and it kind of changed the stats, box score stats. It didn't really change the game. And the Bills' ultimate goal was to let them keep the ball and run it out. So, and then they went when they needed to run some clock at the end of the game, they did. And then kicked a Tyler Bass field goal to go up 13. And then they allowed them to come down and score with 12 seconds left. Like we can act like that was close, but it really wasn't a situation analytically, statistically, that was very close at all. The Bills were up 3 scores multiple times in the game. It's a situation to where the Bills offense could have scored whatever they wanted. They would have scored at the end. They did score with the chest pass. A couple of those things going differently between the St. Brown touchdown and the chest pass touchdown. Like the variation between flip those two things, and like it's probably a blowout at that point. But the Goff was able to get his yards. It happens. I mean, Andrew Luck was a merchant at that when he played. It was, I call it the Andrew Luck, where you're racking up. I mean, and Joe Burrow has been good at it at times this season as well, where he's racking up yards and touchdowns. And sometimes it's mattered for Burrow. Sometimes it really hasn't. So. In Goff's situation, it was close at times, but after that Amon-Ra St. Brown fumble, analytically, it was 99.5% and varying at any given time for a Bills win percentage. It wasn't really there. As much as our Bills fandom will come in at times and say there's some way they're going to blow it, not with the way Josh Allen was playing. The way the Bills blow it is if Josh Allen's not having his best game. That's where you can maybe get the Bills to blow it. But if he's playing like that, I mean, I'm never worried in any situation. And I understand why Dan Campbell on sides kicks it. I think he's too aggressive. I think he's an example of somebody that's too aggressive, especially with 12 minutes left. But his argument was, at least we got the ball back quick because they were probably going to drive the field and score anyways. So Matt Collins returned it to the 5, quick pass to Davis, touchdown, game over, kind of. They had time on the clock still, though. So that's also what extended that game a lot, Kevin, was the fact that they onside kicked it with 12 minutes left and basically bought themselves another drive in a trade for a quick touchdown. So there's varying things that don't make a ton of sense. Box score wise, the way that game wound up.
Yeah, and just one more stat as I see Matt is just about ready to come on with us here and talk about the Patriots. So one more stat to provide some further context. We were talking about that rushing attack, and I said on this show last week that it was going to come down to Josh Allen versus David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I was only half right because the Bills' run defense did a great job on that rushing attack. And when you see some of these numbers here, David Montgomery's rushing stat line, 5 rushes, 4 yards, 0 touchdowns. The Bills held the 4th best rushing attack to just 48 total yards. The Lions were averaging over 151 yards per game prior to Sunday. So the fact that they were the first team, I think you mentioned this, but the Bills were the first team to hold Detroit to under 100 rushing yards all season, I think that says a lot.
Bills have a much better run defense when they need it. They'll go into too high. They won't care if you run. That's ultimately sometimes what DVOA tries to tell you is that the Bills, the situations they let you run in don't affect the game. The situations they need to affect the game, they will stop the run. So that's ultimately what matters. And the Bills came in with a really run-heavy defensive scheme, especially missing their starting 3 of their 5 starting DBs, and basically just said, we're stopping the run. We don't think they can beat us if we can stop the run. And they happen to be correct, even regardless of the final score of the game. But like we started the show with, although the Lions game was fun and CBS was there and, dancing around and acting like it was the Super Bowl, really wasn't AFC NFC game is, you could argue, especially a crossover division game based on your seeding. Those games even have less importance because you don't have a common opponent with anybody from it. It's not an AFC game. There's much to be said that it could be statistically actually one of the least important games on your schedule. One game that's always important, whether this year maybe a little bit less than normal, but the fact is, like, New England can cause havoc to the Bills. They've tried in the past and succeeded at times with Mac Jones, whether it was the win game where they had a real chance at the division, whether it was last year really putting the Bills behind the 8 ball with seeding. The Bills did coming back to get the 2, but it was unlikely, and mainly due to their division games and the Bills struggling against the Jets and the Patriots last year. This year, they're looking to make a change on that. But the Patriots game is unfortunately as important to the Bills as the Lions game. Like, they're still chasing the Chiefs. We'll see what happens on that. We'll see if there's any chance at that. We'll have a good idea based on this Texans game this weekend. But the Patriots game does still hold some water for the Bills. At least the first game, maybe the second game won't. So we have to have a good time talking about the Patriots. Matt, welcome to the show, man. I really appreciate it. You come with high reviews from my friend and someone I've had on the show before, Pat. So we really appreciate you being here, man. And one thing we always like to add, it's going to be a little tougher for you, but recap the season for a lot of Bills fans that, they keep track of the Patriots, but give us your input on what's happened to date, the change to May, whatever you want to say that brings you up to speed with 3 games left.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the intro. I hope I can live up to the hype over here. The season for the Patriots, new era, no more Bill Belichick. So it's Jerod Mayo as head coach and Drake May, starts the year as quarterback and waiting behind Jacoby Brissett. The year starts off fantastically. Team goes to Cincinnati. You see basically everything you wanted to see. The defense forces a key turnover, holds down Joe Burrow in that passing attack with, a good coverage scheme. The running attack gets going, and, you're able to take a lead and then finish Cincinnati off on the ground at the end, not give the ball back, and get a low-scoring win on the road against a team that is expected to be possibly one of the best teams in the AFC. It looked like this was a hot start for New England. That was the high water mark. It has been really all downhill from there. The next game, you lose in overtime to Seattle in a game where, or at home against Seattle in a game where you could have kicked a game-sealing field goal in regulation. It gets blocked. Seattle forces overtime. You lose. You get blown out in back-to-back weeks by the Jets and 49ers, and then lose at home to the Dolphins without Tua in a 15-10 game where you score what should have been the game-winning touchdown, but your second-round pick receiver can't get his foot in bounds, and you end up losing that one. And that is what ends up getting Drake May involved. Immediately, you have a spark. 21 points, the highest output of the season thus far in a blowout loss to the Texans. But, this team then, gets blown out by the Jaguars in London. You get a close victory over the Jets after Drake May gets concussed and Brissett comes in relief. And then really the only other high watermark of the season was a win against the Bears. Team's first 2-score win in almost 2 seasons, dominating a Bears offense and forcing a coaching change there after that one, forcing the offensive coordinator out after holding them to 3 points. But since then, home loss to the Rams, the defense could not get a stop at any point in the middle of the game. A loss in Miami where the defense couldn't get a stop. A loss to the Colts where the Colts had either a 19 or a 20 play game-winning drive that culminated in a winning 2-point conversion at the end.
Oh yeah.
And then after the bye week, a very late bye week, a loss in Arizona, a game I think many Patriots fans thought was winnable. The team looked completely unprepared coming out of the bye, and now there are possible winds of change that might be one and done for Gerard Mayo. The headlines have started this week after the loss to Arizona.
It's funny you say that because I literally just saw a report that Mike Vrabel could be interested in coaching the Patriots. Is there any truth to that? Is there any meat on the bone there?
It's hard to tell. That report came from Tom Curran, who is someone who is very buddy with Mayo. So it was interesting that came from him of all people. I think it's hard to know. And obviously, Mike Vrabel being interested in the job does not mean the job is open. It just means Mike Vrabel sees that it might be. So, but
yeah, with that's interesting. Like, what could you have expected from Mayo that I guess maybe beating the Cardinals would have saved his job? But like, what ultimately was the expectation? Rookie quarterback, like,
so
what were you hoping for?
So I'm in the camp as someone who came in as a Mayo believer and is now, I think, past the threshold where I'm looking for a change here. My expectation personally was in-season growth. The betting total for the team was 4.5 wins, and it was and they won 4 games last year. So depending on when May plays, how he looks, the win total matters, I think, a little bit less than, do they get better as the year goes on?
Sure.
The problem is they haven't gotten better at all as the year's gone on. The quarterback play has gotten better. Drake May is at least like a decent rookie quarterback in this league so far. He is significantly better than Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi last year. And if you looked at that Patriots team from last year and said, you're going to bring everything back and you're going to improve the quarterback play, well, they won 4 games last year. You'd expect 5 or 6 wins probably this year. And the Patriots are at 3 and probably going to stay at 3 with the schedule the rest of the way. So, I think a worse outcome when you have better quarterback play is a tough spot to be in, especially when you promoted your linebackers coach to head coach, and the linebackers might be the worst part of your team.
No hope to beat the Chargers next week, huh? Nothing. You don't think that'll? I mean, ultimately, like, you look true. They're not playing good though. If you look at it from like an outsider's perspective, an in-division outsider's perspective, and I look at this and I'm like, I look at the Jets and I look even at the Dolphins at times, and I'm like, I don't know that who I would pick between the 3 situations, but I know that the Patriots are like maybe in a situation where, I don't know. I don't know that the Jets or Dolphins, like, I guess you would know more inside the room or how you feel about Mayo coaching. But from an outsider's perspective, it looks like your quarterback's shown some moments. It looks like, your offensive line stinks. Is that like whose issue is it? Like, usually that's been a staple, whether it's Mac Jones or doesn't really matter, but it's usually been a staple. Like, the Patriots are at least going to play solid offensive line football, whether we win or not. Post Brady, I don't know. But what's happened? Skarnecki has been long gone, but what's happened there for the Patriots?
It's kind of been a slow bleed out on the line, and it starts with Bill Belichick. They had Joe Thuney, and they had the money to re-sign Joe Thuney or the opportunity to trade him, and they did nothing. They just let him walk to Kansas City. So that, I think, is kind of your initial point, and you lose him. You trade Shaq Mason, which at the time looked like a savvy move, moving on from somebody a year too early rather than a year too late. Your backup for both of those guys is Ted Karras, who's now in Cincinnati and playing well. He ends up leaving in free agency. And you put yourself in a spot where you need a guard. So now you're drafting Cole Strange in the first round, which was a Bill Belichick move. They gave the 5th-year option to Isaiah Wynn because the first year he was like really healthy. He played really well, and then he was never healthy again after that. So you end up in a situation where your left guard leaves, you've traded your right guard, your left tackle and Isaiah Wynn can no longer play at a high level at all. And then Trent Brown was kind of the ultimate Band-Aid tackle you could put at either side, and he left this offseason. So a lot of pieces leaving, with the only guy kind of coming in to fill a hole here has been Mike Onwenu at right guard. But David Andrews, who's been the longtime center, is out for the year. They lost him early in the season.
Yeah.
And basically they went for quantity over quality on the line this year, hoping we can coach somebody up and see what happens. And just, it hasn't happened. Vidarian Lowe at left tackle looks like a mid-level backup left tackle. Demontre Jacobs at right tackle looks like a fringe roster type player. Layden Robinson, who they took in the 4th round, he has been almost unplayably bad at either guard spot when they've tried him. And then they had Nick Leverett was a guy they signed to be your center and guard backup, and he played like one game and immediately got benched for somebody they picked up on waivers 2 days beforehand, who has been the starting center ever since, who also looks like a mid-level backup type player. So there's jobs to be won on this offensive line for next year. Cole Strange is finally healthy right now. We think he might play this week. He missed, he had a torn patellar in his knee late last season, so he might be ready to come back. And they drafted tackle Caden Wallace from Penn State with the hope of being, a guy who might be able to play 4 spots on the line. He played one game, he got hurt, and he might also be ready to come back this week. But yeah, there have been people who have played significant snaps for New England's offensive line who might not make a 53-man roster out of camp next year.
Yeah, that's a bum. We'll see. I mean, hey, some reinforcements coming at least maybe soon to end the year, whether it's not this week, maybe you get them in for our next game.
This is the conversation we've been trying to talk ourselves into on a week-by-week basis for the last month of, okay. But when these guys get back, maybe it gets better.
Yeah. I mean, you have some good tight end play right now with Hooper and Henry. Probably the highlight, of your offense right now. I mean, obviously the rookie quarterback, but obviously the highlight of your offense. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson's a guy I've always liked. He has his moments. I mean, he's not perfect, but he's been a guy that I think is a solid RB1 in this league. It's going to be tough, I guess, behind the offensive line you just ripped off. But, he's been a guy that can cause havoc. We've seen him do so. I mean, even back to the Damian Harris days, right? Like it's been, and then he's been an interesting running back. I mean, he came out on that win game, right? Am I not mistaken? Was that his real first, the Bills? Was that his first really like, all right, Ramondre Stevenson back in his rookie year would have been 2021. But I was like, all right, I think they got a combo here with him and Damian Harris. The Bills went and signed Damian Harris, never to play football again.
I was rooting for him when he went up to Buffalo. That was unfortunate. The thing with Ramondre this year is that he hasn't even looked like the team's best running back. They bring in a new system here, so you bring Alex Van Pelt from Cleveland, which is an outside zone running attack, and Ramondre Stevenson has had good games, but he hasn't obviously part of this is the offensive line, but he has not consistently read blocks well. I think it was the Colts game a few weeks ago where I was watching the tape and it was just like, it was bad. We wasn't seeing holes when they were there. Antonio Gibson, though, has been really good for them. So we'll see, we'll see what the usage looks like. Ramondre Stevenson isn't awful. He's just been, he's been inconsistent. He's a decent back in this league. A guy who can do a lot. He can be a power runner, run between the tackles, can carry it outside, can block, can catch the ball. Like, he's not bad, but the outside zone, he has been very boomer bust.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And if you look through the rest of your offense, I mean, the receiver, man, that's killing you. Like, that position's killing you. Just from totally like looking at it from an outsider's perspective. I mean, Polk, you had a chance at a bunch of receivers there. I know you kind of got, the rumor was you were interested in Keon Coleman.
That's who I wanted. I've been following him for you guys this year, and would have loved to have him in this offense.
He's been great. Like, he's been a good addition. He obviously had the wrist injury from Jordan Poyer, randomly enough, hurting him on a deep pass. Then obviously had a big play against the Lions last week, but he's back in full strength. But the offense is just better with Keon in it. And then obviously you had Ladd McConkey, I guess A.D. Mitchell to some extent, Xavier Worthy. You had some of those guys right there in that same range. And it just seems unfortunate. Like, I liked Polk a little bit, but it just seems unfortunate that, I mean, I've seen some advanced analytics that hate him. So is that warranted? I mean, God, that stinks.
He actually got off to a decently strong start to the season. And in the Miami game, he thought he caught the game-winning touchdown and didn't get his foot in bounds. And that kind of seemed like a turning point. There was that, and he was kind of, going on social media after posting screenshots that looked like his foot was in. And then the same thing happened the next week. You lose by when I was 17 points or whatever it was at San Francisco, a game that's never close. And he's again posting screenshots of a catch where he thought his foot was in. And like that was kind of a turning point for him mentally. Then like they go to London, they play Jacksonville. He gets targeted 3 or 4 times. They're all contested catches. He can't come up with it. They all hit his hands. He doesn't catch a single one of them. He hasn't had more than 2 targets in the game ever since then. And he was a guy that came in being like, okay, well, he has good hands. You can throw him the ball anyway. He hasn't made the catches, and then mentally it hasn't been there. And yeah,
interesting.
One of the first plays of the game last week, they drew up a play for him. Or where it could go to him on a big play action concept, and he runs the wrong route. And this is one of your first plays of the game. This is one of your scripted plays. This is one of the ones you really should have been working on in practice. So that's been going on. And he's 87 yards on the season.
Oh, God, that's brutal for where he was picked. That's
brutal. And the 4th round pick, Javon Baker out of UCF, still doesn't have a catch on the season. He missed last week in the concussion protocol. We just found out he got into a car accident. So thankfully it was just a concussion and he's okay. He might be back this week. But
a lot of Bills fans raged about that. They wanted him to double dip with Keon with Baker. A lot of Bills fans were like, why wouldn't they have done that too? Like they did with Polk. Baker was a hot topic here. A lot of film study guys, a lot of analytics guys here were like, Baker would have been a nice compliment.
I actually, my player comp, my like highest ceiling player comp for him was in some ways like a Stephon Diggs in the, day 3 guy who has a little bit of that diva mentality, but is a playmaker. Unfortunately, we have seen the diva mentality. We have not seen the playmaker. And I think you go back to the preseason, the big first play from May that was like, whoa, this is different. Again, the preseason was like a 60-yard post down the field that he drops in the basket to Javon Baker, and he can't make the catch. And that was like, that is kind of the high watermark for Baker. I mean, we really haven't even seen him get targeted much since then. And
you had, Taekwon. I mean, you had a couple of players that you've since moved on from already. Including KJ Osborne, former UB player, here in Buffalo, and it just seems like a revolving position. And like, I mean, I always see like so the Patriots have waived this receiver. Man, I thought he had potential, and every time I see it, like it's just you got popped up. You still got Pop playing, but ultimately, like he's probably not, like, I don't know, man. It just seems like an unfortunate set of circumstances there from the receiver room there, and it seems like a T. Higgins on his way. I don't know.
I think we're all praying. I don't know, Travis Hunter, there's already the sections in the Patriots fan group of, who wants T. Higgins, who wants Ted McMillan, who wants Travis Hunter, who wants, there might be a Luther Burden section out there. I'm not sure. It's a position of need for New England again. It's been a position of need for New England since they traded away Brandon Cooks. Really was kind of the moment, because in 2018 they had guys, but it was like an older Josh Gordon, an aging Edelman, Chris Hogan kind of near the end there. And it was like, all right, we know that this is going to be a need. And every swing that they've taken since then has been a complete and total whiff.
I was going to say, what's the overall plan here with the receiver room? Because I guess kind of by default, Kendrick Bourne is wide receiver 1, right?
Yeah. Bourne is going to be your top outside guy and Pop Douglas is your guy in this lot. Like, Bourne's good, but he's also year 1 after a torn ACL. So he has not been like fully himself in all of this. This is not the Bourne we saw in 2021 either. Kayshon Boutte is the other guy. And like they targeted last week, Kayshon Boutte gets a pass right in his hands over the middle, drops it, fumbles it up into the air. It's an interception. And, May throws it behind him intentionally to lead him away from a defender. And after the game, Boutte's like, I should have caught that ball, but like the pass could have been better. That's summarizing what he said, and it was kind of.
Didn't he also critique the game plan too? I saw
this for the second time this season, and it was you aren't good enough to be talking like this. That's for sure.
That's so like with Bourne being that wide receiver 1, I feel like Kendrick Bourne would be a very, very good wide receiver in Joe Brady's offense here in Buffalo. But like, obviously that doesn't mean he's going to be a wide receiver 1. So maybe wide receiver 2, but probably like a 3 or a 4. So I feel like they're probably asking him, they are asking him to do too much in that offense. So, I mean, I guess we kind of covered it with like what the overall goal is here, but I mean, for Drake, sorry, I might be losing connection a little bit, but
no, you're good.
For Drake May to come in as a rookie, wouldn't you think that they'd want to surround him with more talent than Kendrick Bourne as their wide receiver one? Like, nothing against him, but if you're going to have these multiple draft picks, you're going to double dip with Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. You have Tyquan Thornton, who's still a young guy, Demario Douglas. Was KJ Osborne their only solution in free agency?
Well, I think part of it, like they went hard after Calvin Ridley, and they were willing to overpay Calvin Ridley by quite a bit, and Tennessee still beat them out there. The Pats kind of hit a point where they said, this is too rich for us, which I think was fair. I don't know if Tennessee loves that contract right now. And then I think the Pats were the highest bidders on Brandon Ayuk. He just didn't want to come to New England. So like they were aggressive looking for things. It's just, you can only do so much. And I think the idea with Osborne was fit in the system. He's played an outside zone running offense before. So you can, as Bourne wasn't ready to start the season. So it was kind of, if we can get someone to fill that role to start the year, and then you hope some of these young players come along. And Pop Douglas has been fine. Like I think he can be a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 in this league. Bourne is a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. But there's just, there's no real deep speed. And kind of their workaround this year, circling back a little bit to the tight ends, they will kind of line up the tight ends as the X receivers at points to get the receivers into more favorable things. Like you'll see Austin Hooper split out wide so that you can have guys in the slot working over there, or he'll be the point man in a bunch so that Bourne and Pop have some room to work. And I think Alex Antel has done a good job with that. He's used the tight ends really well. And then May can be very, very accurate. He sprays a little bit sometimes. So I think he likes the bigger bodies to throw to. So he's just going to throw to the tight ends a lot.
Yeah.
Some of these, like Polk's lack of production, some of that is that if they're running mirrored concepts, the same routes on either side of the play, he's going to look to the side where the tight ends are. So if Polk's getting open on it, he's just not going to get the look right now.
So would you say that the wide receiver room is pretty similar to the offensive line, in that they pretty much just took a bunch of players and said quantity over quality here, and just say, hey, we're hoping that one or two of these guys really pops? Because I feel like a lot of these guys have matching skill sets, and they don't have a diversified wide receiver room, which makes it harder for that rookie quarterback. So when you said that about the offensive line, it made me think about the wide receivers, where it's just like, we're just going to throw a bunch and see what sticks,
No, you're spot on. And I think there's, slightly more quality here in that you're using a top 50 pick on a receiver in Jalen Polk. So they are clearly expecting him to be something, but you're spot on about it's a lot of the same player, Kendrick Bourne, Jalen Polk, Kayshon Boutte, KJ Osborne. These are all guys that play like the exact same role in an NFL offense in theory. And, you are asking questions that Patriots fans have been asking since, last March or April, and will be continuing to ask going forward here, because I don't think anybody has a great answer for it right now.
Yeah, you got the tight ends first and third in catches, targets, and yards. So, the Bills
career year for Henry.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills can agree. Like they run a lot of Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox when both healthy. It's similar in that regards. So we understand what the Bills will do the same thing. With their inside receivers being tight ends, they'll stand up them in 12 personnel to do a lot of different things. But the difference is the Bills then have a skill set like a Khalil Shakir, or they're going to run boundary and Amari Cooper and with Keon Coleman. And then they love Mac Hollins. So that's just, I mean, he's just grown into like a folk hero here of what he's able to do everything. So Bills have 3 boundary receivers they really, really like. And they have a bunch of inside receivers they really, really like. And then they have Curtis Samuel, the only guy that doesn't make any sense on this roster right now. He's overpaid. He's always hurt. He has a lot of talent, but like Josh Allen just doesn't see him often. A lot of misconnection for as good as Allen is. And he just decides, like, I'd rather throw to Mac Hollins. And it's been successful.
Samuel seemed like almost like the backup for the Shakir role. If something happens there.
It was, and when Shakir was out for a game and a half against the only two, like the 2 back-to-back losses they had against Baltimore and Houston, it was Samuel time and did nothing. So ultimately, you're right. That was probably part of the plan. But the difference is Shakir's contact balance and what he's able to do is the Bills got lucky with a fifth round guy that they comp to an Amon-Ra St. Brown in his own way. So they're pretty happy with what he's able to do. He's a tough cover. His yak is ridiculous. He's a guy that the Bills have not had traditionally with Josh Allen, because Steph Diggs was never a yak guy for the Bills.
When it's looking at this team on paper, I forget who I was saying this to earlier this year, but like what this Bills team reminded me of in some ways was like that, like 2010, 2011, 2012 Patriots, the way they were in offense, where it was the two tight ends, and then your top receiver is going to be your Wes Welker or your Julian Edelman, and the way Shakir is. And I like when you look at draft pedigree and the way they play on the field, Shakir reminds me of Edelman in some ways. He's that safety blanket for Josh Allen. You can create, after the catch, and he can be physical, and which I hate to say. It's really annoying to have to play against that. He's a really good player, and there were some in New England I know that wanted him to land here, and
he went too late. Yeah, I think he's proven that he was at least a second round pick. And even coming out, and I mean, a lot of people. I remember reading a mock that had him going in the first, and I was like, okay, that's early. But he's proven to be like what would be a late first round pick in my opinion, and he's been productive enough to really be. I mean, him and Josh are just on the same page. And then you look at him and Curtis Samuel, and they're just not on the same page, and that's going to lose your reps. But it comes to Khalil Shakir. He can't tackle him either. It does remind you of Edelman a lot in the Brady days. And he's been a guy that has worked. And the Bills also have focused on the boundary receiver too. So like obviously they sunk a pseudo first round pick into it, and then traded for Cooper, to where that really stresses most defenses. Most defenses don't have the personnel, and we've seen the Bills score 90 points in back-to-back weeks. But they just haven't had the personnel to match up with what the Bills. Why they bring in 2 tight ends, 3 running backs, and you see Ty Johnson going over 100 yards receiving. It does remind you a lot of the Brady-ish style of days of what he was able to do in some of those mid years there. After the Super Bowls. So the Bills will run a similar offense to that. You're correct. They do use the running backs a ton too.
Yeah, and let me tell you, with this Patriots defense, it does not take a lot to stress it and get it uncomfortable. So, we talked a lot about the offense with the Patriots, but I think the real mismatch here is going to be when Buffalo's offense is on the field, because this might be a repeat of that 2021 wild card game in terms of the way you guys were able to score.
That was going to be my next question for you. Okay, now transition from the high level Patriots for a minute. What is the goals for the Patriots in this game against the Bills? Like, look decent, don't get blown out, but like ultimately, what are you looking for? Like, you're in great position for a Travis Hunter. Like, I always like to ask this because I never know. Everyone has a different opinion. Are you like, let's go spoil the Bills, let's do whatever we can to get some turnovers? They don't care as much. There's only proceeding. Like, where do you see, like, all that would do is keep the Bills in the 2 and ultimately give the Chiefs the 1 seed. But like, where do you stand in, like, what is it from a Patriots perspective? You just want to see growth from May, no injuries. Like, I guess talk to me about from this game now, what are you hoping to see from the Patriots in this game going to Buffalo in this one?
Growth from young players is pretty much the big one. I think, and this is on both sides of the ball, especially after the bye, and you have a late bye like this, it feels like the battle started last week on trying to secure jobs for next season on this team. And I think if you're a young player, your goal is to play well enough that you impact the way the front office is going to view, your position this offseason. So obviously May is at the forefront of that. The receivers, like we talked about, Polk and Baker, the offensive lineman, if Cole Strange returns, is he a guy who can play well enough that you think he can start next year? And they're talking about converting him to center. And Ben Brown, who's been the starting center, had 2 bad snaps last week. So if Strange gets in there, that'll be something to watch. And Layden Robinson, if he shows improvement, Caden Wallace, if he can get in and do anything, look like a respectable NFL player. And then defensively, to go with this, you want to see them find anything that's successful. This team is like pretty solid at playing man coverage. Yep. Everything else they have done on defense has been a disaster, and it kind of goes right up the spine. Christian Barmore has missed most of the season, and their defensive tackle depth has been, very bad. These guys get no push whatsoever. So if there's anyone in that defensive tackle room who can show anything, the linebackers have been horrendous. They don't attack blocks. They don't react quickly. They have not been able to cover. Any type of spot drop zone coverage has been, just easy pickings for opposing quarterbacks because the linebackers can't cover. So just get receivers on Shalani Tavai or Christian Ellis or Sione Takitaki, and the game's going to be over. You're just going to get some big plays that way. So improvement from those guys. And I think one player to watch if he plays this week is Kyle Duggar. He got a big extension last year.
I saw that.
And he has been one of New England's worst defenders this year. He's a guy who played really well for the first couple of years in New England. But this year, it's been bad. In Miami, the Dolphins scored 4 touchdowns. He was involved in every single one of them. We're talking multiple blown coverages. We're talking not being able to tackle in the open field. Just mental errors that don't.
Have you
really
sat
make
him,
sense at all.
or you said he may be back? Like, are you benching him? Like, I guess what
he has. So he's been battling a foot injury.
Okay.
We don't know how much of that is an impact, and he was actually out of practice today. And he has been. So he missed time. He came back. Now he's back to being out of practice. So if he plays, we don't know if he's actually
just sit that guy down.
Then
week. If he's your worst, maybe it's time to wrap it up. Maybe play some young guys. Like, it might be time to wrap him up. But maybe you want to see him get back. I don't.
Well, and then we talk about the safeties and playing young guys. You look at the position right now. Duggar was a guy who's supposed to be a cornerstone player who has been horrendous this season. Jabril Peppers has had an off-field incident that has kept him away from the team for quite a bit. He's back now, but does not look like the same player. They had Marte Mapu, who they drafted as a safety linebacker hybrid last year, and he has been a healthy scratch for the last couple of weeks. He just can't get on the field. They've got Del Pettis as an undrafted free agent who has actually had some nice moments, but he's an undrafted free agent. And then, in some ways, your 2 best safeties have been Jalen Hawkins, who's kind of just a guy who they signed who has had some nice moments, and Brendan Schooler, who is the special teams ace and gunner for this team. They built an entire defensive package for him, which is maybe the most interesting thing about the defense, where they'll basically go blitz 0 with him as a special teams safety on the line of scrimmage, and he's either blitzing or playing some kind of a spy where he's a really good tackler. So
spy Josh Allen with him.
If the Patriots are able to get enough stops on 1st and 2nd down to force 3rd and long, you're going to see that. And you're going to see him either trying to take down Josh Allen in the pocket or spying and trying to
not spying doesn't work. We know that. So spying, you do remove a guy from coverage. Josh Allen can burn that, but I still think that's a better. You got to have a spy on Josh Allen. I don't care if it's Schooler or some random guy, which I guess he technically is, or the All-Pro. You have to spy Josh Allen and take your chances in coverage with a lack. He's going to find guys anyway scrambling. So ultimately, the best thing you can do is at least limit what he can see, or at least limit his legs, even if he beats you. That's the best way. If you don't spy him, and you run man, he's going to run for 70 plus yards.
Unless you can get pressure so fast you take him down. Like if you don't win that, it's over.
And he's on a sack streak too. It's been multiple games since he's been sacked. Now he'll get sacked 3 times, I guess. So the Patriots are probably bottom of the league in sacks, right? Aren't they? I
don't know the raw numbers. I know they're weird because a lot of the advanced metrics think they're somewhere middle of the pack, but that does not match the eye test to me at all. And this is one of the other issues with the defense is that if they go into nickel formation, they can't stop the run out of it at all. So they have to go into heavier looks. But when they go into heavier looks, they cannot pass. They can't cover at all. And they also can't rush the passer because they're putting 3 defensive tackles on the field. And Keon White is at his best as a pass rusher on the inside, the defensive end they took in the 2nd round last year. So now you're moving him to the
nickel then against 11 personnel? Or what will you guys generally?
So against Miami, actually, what they were doing was essentially a 3-4 defense, but with 3 corners and 1 safety. Where Jonathan Jones was kind of a guy who would be your corner or your safety. Like if you're going to be up, he's going to be playing corner, but also if you play a too high look, he's going to be back at safety. It wasn't that effective. it was something different. And the core issue here is that if you have three defensive tackles, and then Keon White and Anthony Jennings as outside linebackers, and they just couldn't generate pressure. And then you can, as an offense, you can design looks where you know that Keon White's going to have to drop into coverage. So it's three defensive tackles and Anthony Jennings, and you've got Keon White in coverage. Like, that's a nightmare.
And you got only 11 turnovers on the year. The Bills have only turned the ball over 7 times, league low. Like, I mean, that's got to be a challenge. Only 11 turnovers.
No, they haven't. They have not been able to force it. And they forced one last week. They actually had one really nice play. It was a third down. They brought the blitz package and everything. They get pressure on Kyler. He panics and throws a pick, and they get a roughing the passer penalty on it, so it gets called back. The one good play the defense makes the entire game, which, also been that kind of season. Also, I don't know their overall sack numbers, but I do know that whatever you're seeing for numbers, they had 9 sacks against the Bears. So know that it's kind of inflated by playing Caleb and having one really, really good game on defense.
Oh, he's so bad. I mean, I would take May over him. Like, he can't see the defense. Like, I don't know what's wrong with that guy, but he holds the ball way too long. I'm feeling good if I was any of the other teams. We'll see about Penix, but I'm feeling good if I'm any of the other teams that picked after that.
Yeah.
I mean, that just
okay. Yeah, I looked up. Patriots have 27 sacks this year, which is 28th in the NFL.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And 9 of those in one game. So if you take those out, they have 18 in the other ones, which would be worst in the league.
Yikes. Okay.
Matt, so that being said, what can you say about the defensive line? Because, tying this into what we said about the offense, and that was always a staple of the Bill Belichick teams, that you would win up front at the line of scrimmage with the offensive lines and the defensive lines. It seems like they've had a pretty lackluster season, though, up front. Would you agree with that?
Lackluster might be charitable here. Yeah, there's been some really a combination of bad luck and also decisions looking for the future. So they traded
Judon and Uche too.
Yeah. You trade Judon, which, they got a 3rd-round pick for that, which looks fantastic. The Falcons are last in the NFL in sacks, even with that addition. They cut Lawrence Guy, who was one of their, veteran run defenders on the inside. They were counting on filling that roster spot with someone younger, giving the opportunity for someone to win that job. No one has really stepped up into it. You trade Uche during the season because he's not playing well. I don't know if it means much. They signed O'Shane Zimenez over the offseason to be kind of your backup Uche, and he tore his ACL like 2 weeks into the season. So he's been out. And then the big one, Barmore, who broke out last year and got an extension, had a pulmonary embolism right at the start of training camp.
Yikes.
Yeah, so thankfully he's healthy and he's now back to playing, but he's not nearly what he was last year. They're just getting him out there to get some experience. So it's Keon White has been a good player and probably the best player in their front, but he is someone who is best as a pass rusher on the inside, and he also can't defend the run if you put him on the inside. So,
you did sign Yannick Ngakoue. You did take him off waivers, right?
I forgot we made that move.
Yeah,
I think that says
he's a guy that Bills fans wanted as depth, and the Patriots are like, nah, he's coming here, man. He's going to finish out the season here. It was interesting. That's an interesting move.
Yeah, he has. I mean, he's been. This is the other issue for this team is because they don't stop the run. They don't get into spots to put the pass rushers on the field.
He can't be on the field, right?
Yeah, he's not playing a lot, and he hasn't been noticeable when he's out there. So then they got like Devon Godshaw at nose tackle, who's a fine player, but you're just asking way too much of one player. So again, it's the defensive line has kind of slowly degraded over the last 5 years. And if you look ahead to the future for the Patriots in this draft class, there's obviously, I think Travis Hunter is the sexy pick at the top. If you don't go that way, Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, a defensive end or outside linebacker, and a defensive tackle, there are guys who could very well be fits for this team.
Is Dietrich Wise the last remaining player from the Brady era? Aside from Jacoby Brissett.
They have Jonathan Jones, too.
He's been there that long?
Yeah, he was 2017, I believe, was his first year.
Okay.
Or 2016. It was one of those two.
Because I think
Yeah,
it
Jones
was
was 16. Yeah, Jones was 16.
okay. So
it's
it's Jonathan Jones, Dietrich Wise, and I think Lawrence Guy was the other longest tenured player too,
yeah.
right?
Oh, and Joe Cardona, the long snapper, is still around.
Ah,
So
Wow.
he's in that too. Yeah, actually, funny enough, it's funny with Jonathan Jones. People don't realize. I'm assuming everybody knows the story about Malcolm Butler getting benched in the Super Bowl and all that.
Yep.
The thing that never gets talked about there is that Jonathan Jones went out for the year after the divisional round to that year, and he was the best. He was actually statistically the best corner on the team that season, and clearly the best slot corner on the team. And against Philly in that Super Bowl, that was a big reason why the team lost, because nobody could cover in the slot. But
yeah, that
yeah.
is interesting. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I liked Anthony Jennings a little bit too. He's a guy like I just think always overproduces, but like I like him. I mean, maybe he's out of
solid.
place, or maybe it's just not working. But like, I think he's a solid football. He's a guy I would like on my roster. When I look through your roster, I think he's like a solid. Like
he's useful.
There's
well, I think this is one of the issues right now is that there are a lot of players on this defense who are useful. Like, Keon White is useful. Godchaux's been a good player. Anthony Jennings is I don't think you want him as a starter, but you want him on your team. And the corner room, like I haven't talked about Christian Gonzalez here. He's been one of the best corners in the NFL this year, especially lately as he has come on. He's been really good and improving with every single week. And Marcus Jones has been a solid slot corner. Jonathan Jones, he doesn't have everything he used to have, but he's been all right. It's just like they have all these players who have been good in the pros, Duggar and Peppers, and this defense has been they're outside the top 20 in yards and points scored. And I don't know, it's probably the paywall now, but the last time I checked, defensively their DVOA was one of the worst in the league, like bottom 5.
Well, good news is a friend of the show, Aaron Schatz, comes on our show frequently. So I'll pull it for you right now.
Amazing.
He's their 30th defensively DVOA and 31st against the pass.
Yep.
So you're ripping it off. It's challenging when you have those cornerbacks to see why, but it's got to be linebacker
all over
issues,
the middle,
safety issues. Yeah, like
it's the boundary. Basically, the spine of the defense has been broken, and part of that is players being out. But they've been out for a while, and guys aren't stepping up. So blame has.
They'll
to
tack
go
you a
on
lot
the
like the
coaches.
Lions. They're going to come at, especially running man, which the Lions did too. Just like the Patriots are up there in man rates.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to come right at you with running backs, tight end, double tight ends. They're going to come at you. I'm assuming Gonzalez is going to be able to pick his boundary receiver that he wants to cover and kind of. Does he play sides? Does he shadow? I don't.
It depends on the opponent.
Okay.
So when the Patriots have played a team that likes to put their best receivers in the slot, they've typically just had him play a side. And then when it's been a receiver who plays outside or a clear number one, it'll usually be him shadowing someone. So like against the Rams, this was a big thing. He basically never covered Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua that entire game. And the Rams realized he's playing sides and then just shifted all of their passing concepts to the other side and got one-on-ones with a different corner somewhere else down the field, or your shot plays over the middle against the linebackers. They dominated.
I would assume he'd play the side against the Bills. I mean, maybe he would decide to cover Cooper or Coleman, I guess. But I would assume he'll play a side, whoever the Bills throw over there.
I do wonder that the defense got a lot of flack for not having him shadow someone. So I do wonder if we see an adjustment. And especially with Shakir, I feel like being the clear number one, I wonder if we see them try to do that. I'd also be curious, depending on situation, if they try to put him on a tight end. I don't know if that's the right size matchup, but if that's going to be a top target of Josh and some of these situations.
Yeah, the Bills will run 12. Yeah, they'll run 12 with their 2 tight ends and Shakir and Matt Collins. That's a personnel package you can see for sure, and the Bills will run out of it. If they feel like you're doing enough with Gonzalez, that they'll run right at him. Like they'll do different things that's been successful. So I
think Shakir is probably going to see a lot of Marcus Jones. If
I would think so. Yeah, he generally scores slot corners pretty exclusively.
And that'll be a really interesting matchup because I think they're similar athletically. And Marcus Jones, it's funny. He has probably some of the best reps I've ever seen of a corner who gives up catches just because he's so small. Like he'll cover guys and then just still get mossed on it, and it doesn't matter. But I don't know if Shakir is going to do that to him. So I think we might just get some really good reps,
Yeah,
going back.
different player. Yeah, he'll be more your yak guy. They're gonna get the ball to him in the flat. They're gonna get him the ball to him over the middle and see what he can do with the ball in his hands. And generally, he's been successful. So it's all about, can he limit yak? If he can, he'll have a mildly successful day. If he can't, Shakir will do what he does. Or if he can, the Bills will look out. I mean, they will. They don't mind looking elsewhere. They don't have to go to Shakir. The Bills will look elsewhere if they think that there's a matchup issue with the two tight ends. But I know we got to get you out of here. We really appreciate you popping on.
Wait,
and I hate to do
I have one more real quick.
Yeah, real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
So we were talking about their different defensive coverages, and I know you've talked about a few, but like, what's their primary look? Because I was looking at our lads, and it looks like they have them playing a 3-3-5. And then I know you talked about they play that one safety high. They play nickel. I mean, did they ever play 4-3? So could you just kind of sum it all up in terms of like what we could be seeing? Like, I know Belichick used to mix it up a lot. Like, do they mix it up, or are they primarily a set 3-4-4-3?
They're going to mix it up. It's just going to depend on look. So like, you'll see typically in running situations, it's going to be an odd front. Probably it's going to be 5 people, and they're going to put like it's on our lads. Keon White goes down as a defensive end, but in situations like that, they're going to kick him to outside linebacker, and they're going to put an extra defensive tackle in on the front. In passing situations, they've gone more even fronts, 4-man, or when they really want to bring their blitzes to put 6, even 7 people on the line of scrimmage. So, you're going to see that variety, but it feels mostly like a 3-4 a lot of the time. And then you will see like the 4-2-5 look with just 2 defensive tackles, 2 defensive ends, and 2 linebackers off the ball. But they're gonna. The thing for New England, they'll throw a lot at you. They just haven't been good at executing it. So like the coverage disguises don't work because the players don't cover well enough out of them, and they don't rush the passer.
And you run a lot of man, right?
Yeah, there's just going to be a lot of man because when you have corners like this, you want to.
Yeah, it's fair enough. The Bills like to play against. They've been god against man, but the Bills have been very good against man in recent history. Josh Allen specifically is on a heater against man coverage right now. I still think the way to beat him: spy, cover two shell. Hope he makes a mistake. Yeah. I still think that's the way to beat him. I mean, it sucks, but it's ultimately way better than Josh really taking advantage of man coverage.
Well, I think one storyline to watch here, something that has beaten the Patriots at points of the season, is they like to play cover 2 man, and they're doing that without a spy, and they have they got beaten on this quite a bit. They looked at that loss to the Jets in week 3. There was a lot of that, and Aaron Rodgers was actually able to move out of the pocket and create some stuff in that.
I don't think he'll do that with Josh. Maybe. I don't think he'll do that. Well, I mean,
this is the issue, is that it's kind of been pointed out by many that if you play cover 2 without a spy too often, quarterbacks will run if you don't keep your rush lanes, and guys don't keep the rush lanes and they keep playing it. So
yeah, you can't do that though. I mean, maybe you would, but Josh will make even good rush lanes. You can't sack him. So ultimately, that's a dangerous coverage. But maybe they'll throw it at the Bills.
You're running right now into the issue as to why these headlines are coming out in New England.
Cover 2, cover 2 shell, basic cover 3. Like, try your best to limit the Bills. That's the way to cause problems.
Yeah, and I think if I would hope you play a lot of cover 1 man with a spy of some kind. Like, that seems like something they should be good at. I think if the Patriots were to come away with a win in this game, what it's going to be somehow impossibly to pull it upset. It's going to be really good man coverage and forcing a couple turnovers on defense just 100%. By winning at the catch point, or a couple inaccurate throws from Allen, and then offensively play keep away, be able to run the ball and get a couple explosives over the top from May to cash in for touchdowns, and hope to slow the game down as much as possible. I don't find it very likely, but that's when they've won. That's been their path to victory.
Keep away will get you the W. Like, that's the best way to do it. Don't give Josh possessions. Josh will get bored. Like, there's time. Like, that's some of his biggest complaints. He'll get bored in the game, 7-0, and he'll get really bored. So keep it away from him. If he makes a mistake and then you play keep away again. Like, those are ways to really increase doesn't mean you'll win for sure, but increase your odds to win a game against Josh Allen.
Just, I just don't know if this team, the offensive line has not been able to execute consistently enough to do that on that side. And defensively, the whole thing is they get beat so badly on first and second down, they can't do anything fun on third down. And it's just, teams slowly marching down the field on you with a handful of 10 or 20-yard plays in there.
And like Belichick, Sean McDermott's really good against rookie quarterbacks. It's definitely one of his specialties. So he'll confuse coverage. Like he'll definitely make him make decisions. Like that's
and you can
one
do whatever
thing he
you
will
want
do
defensively this week because nobody on this offense is going to threaten you. So like you can just throw whatever you want out there. And I think one final point here we talk about this game. You mentioned the tackling on Khalil Shakir and how important that's going to be in general.
Yep.
This is a cold game. This is a game that means a lot to the Bills for seeding, especially depending on what happens on Saturday in that Chiefs game. And this is a game that doesn't mean as much to the Patriots. Is there a world where the Patriots go up there? It's 14-0, 10 minutes into the game. And the guys are like, yeah, it's cold. I don't really want to tackle anymore. And
we've seen
the
it.
Defense just has its
The
way.
49ers did it. Yeah.
Like that is more likely than a Patriots win in my eyes.
Yeah. So we'll have to see how that all amounts and how that all turns out. It will be a cold day. Therefore, keeping in the game could have the opposite effect. But yeah, a lot on Saturday. If the Chiefs do lose, the Bills will come in with an extra pep in their step. If the Chiefs win, I mean, it does take a little down a notch in terms of, so it's going to be really interesting to see how everything amounts. And then how you, like you said, who are you playing? What's your offensive line rotation going to look like? Are you going for the ultimate dub here? Are you going to run some different plays and some young players? Is anyone going to sit out? That kind of thing. Is there anyone hurt? Are they going to push, Doug or whoever? We'll have to see like the final report going through. But with all that being said, we'll get you out of here.
I could throw one more fun fact in for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
As I leave, I believe it's going to be by far the coldest football game Drake May has ever played in because he's from North Carolina. Yeah. This will be, I think he said this in the press conference, the first time he's had to wear long sleeves playing in a football game.
Oh, that's never good.
Yeah, on the road in Buffalo, your first ever cold weather game against a Sean McDermott defense.
Josh Allen will even complain when there's elements, not the cold. Josh is really good in the cold, but like, because you can't tackle him, but like wind or rain. Josh Allen can even struggle in those environments. So like, it really does take like up here in that stadium. It's built underground. It does take like an adjustment period to get used to it. To the point where like we saw the Mac Jones game where he threw twice. That was a win game, different than the cold, but ultimately like it's a different beast if there's elements. And the Bills have had some elements in recent memory. And this game does look like it'll be pretty cold. So for instance, Tua cannot win here like ever. Like he just doesn't happen. Like he can't do it. Like there's no way for him to win in Buffalo. Like I'm sure he may do it someday down the road, but he's not capable of winning in the cold ever. So
and May is a big, strong guy. This isn't like Mac Jones where he can't throw the ball through the wind, but it's going to be a brand new experience for him. So there could be some real growing pains.
It's a good learning experience for sure. Like on 100%. Like I really think it's like, okay, when we do get good, like I will have to come here and actually, I remember my rookie year when the Bills did XYZ, like I got to remember that, like my sophomore and my years beyond that. So for sure. But Matt, we'll get you out of here. Got to ask you one last thing. Give us a score prediction. Sum it all up for us. I ask everybody from good to bad. Give us our final score prediction, and we'll hopefully we'll see you in a couple weeks, maybe.
What was the score of that wild card game in 2021?
41-17?
47-17.
47. Yeah.
47-17.
I don't think it'll be that bad, but like let's go 38-13 Bills is kind of what I'm feeling.
That sounds right. It sounds right. We'll see if you can steal possession. We'll see if things get goofy. But Matt, thank you so much. Where can people find you throughout the week, and what are you working on?
So I do the Pats Nation podcast on CLNS. So I'm actually going to be on there in like 5 minutes right after we wrap with that. We do Wednesday nights and right after games. And then I write over at Pat's Pulpit. Nice. And you find me on Twitter at Matt St. Dream, or I'm also on Blue Sky now at Matt St. Jean over there. So either one of those spots to hear my thoughts.
Appreciate you, man, for coming on for a little extra, giving us some really good breakdowns. We really appreciate that. Pat had a lot of good things. Pat Lane had a lot of good things to say about you. We have Mark Schofield, friend of the show.
So love Mark. Yeah,
Mark's great. Yeah, Mark's the great. He's doing a lot of different stuff now. But we really, we really always have some really good Patriots guys. So thank you so much, Matt. And we'll be in touch, and we'll see what happens this weekend. We'll see what kind of growth the Patriots show.
Hopefully we get an entertaining game.
Yeah, that's all we can ask for. Thanks, Matt. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Matt.
So really some great breakdown. Like, we don't get to see a lot from the Patriots right now with our battle, so it's really good to see some get some input. That's always fun. Kevin, what was your biggest takeaways from what he said? And then we'll kind of transition into our final segment.
He didn't sound too confident. So it wasn't one of those where it was like, hey, if the Patriots do X, Y, and Z, they have a chance. I think that the Patriots are suffering what we suffered, what I suffered my whole childhood from. I suffered from Tom Brady. They are suffering from Josh Allen now. And it's just like, all right, let's just get through this year. Try to have some positives that come out of the game. Don't have any injuries. Try to get healthy. And then let's look forward to free agency and the draft, because I remember that all too well.
Yeah, so do I. So that does seem like that Khalil Shakir is comped to his Julian Edelman. Just the Bills running a bunch of running backs like they had in the day. They were running all types of different running backs back in the day, different depending on the era, and then had multiple tight ends throughout their tenure of Tom Brady. The Bills are built like literally almost exactly the same thing. We got to get some game plan in real quick, and we got to do some score predictions. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to start with you today. I mean, I got the dub last week. I picked the Bills win. You had the Lions. Like I said, I was hoping I was going to go with the Lions if they had lost or beaten the Rams. I almost picked the Rams against the Bills. I was like, this seems like a W for the Rams based on the situation. So we're going to get into our score predictions here. But first, we're going to talk game plan. I mean, it's the Patriots. They're not very good. We're going to have to go from there. What are you thinking in terms of this game plan to beat the Patriots? I mean, it's silly, but we'll spend a minute. What's your thoughts?
Well, I guess I'll ask you, do you think that the way to attack them is by running the ball? Because I guess the other thing that I took away from that is that I thought that New England was always pretty strong against a run and maybe a little bit weaker against a pass, but maybe it's the opposite way, where maybe it's going to be a little bit harder to throw on them, but easier to run. So as much as we're thinking that Josh Allen is going to put up Josh Allen numbers again, which he probably will, maybe we should expect another big game from running. I mean, okay, let me rephrase that. Josh Allen's still going to eat, but maybe it's going to be another big game for James Cook and Ty Johnson more so than Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman.
Yeah, they talk about running man coverage. So once again, you're talking about a similar game plan to last week with the running backs and the tight ends, short passes, yak. The Bills, we joke about the Patriots wanting to shorten the game to try to win. Like, the Bills will definitely want to shorten this game. They don't want injuries. Just as important as seeding is going in healthy. They want to run the ball. They want to get out of there, win by a couple of scores. I mean, winning by 27-13, 24-13 is just as good as more points and pushing it and maybe getting an injury. So I ultimately think run the ball, play action when needed. They're going to run. I mean, Josh Allen's on a heater, so I don't know if you can really cool him down at the moment, even if it's 10 degrees out. But ultimately, I think that Josh is out to prove something at this moment. And short passes, I think it's going to be very similar. I don't know that receivers are going to get overly involved. They have decent corners, and I just don't think the Bills are going to get overly involved with their receivers in this game. Maybe that'll be not for the next week, but for this week, at least against the Patriots, they just want to get out of. They want to go back home from home, like, healthy, couple score win, and just uneventful. That is like ultimately the name of the game. Win at home. Don't make it it doesn't need to be too pretty. It really doesn't. It's a division game. And I think here's my prediction. You're going to get from back-to-back performances of the Bills defense, quote unquote, letting up a lot of points and struggling. I think you see a good Bills defense. Sean McDermott is historically good against rookie quarterbacks. He's going to run a lot of zone. He's going to run a lot of confusing coverages. You're going to see him bait May into making mistakes. And the Bills are probably going to try to win defensively in this game rather than need to run 40 points up offensively. It's going to be one where they're going to want some turnovers, some sacks with that offensive line. They may be doing another shuffle. Like, the Bills want to just get out in front of it and help the Bills offense in this game. I think the Bills defense is the key to this one, to give the Bills more possessions and to get Josh Allen in a baseball cap in the fourth quarter. We do not need a game-winning drive in a 21-21 game. Stressing the roster in this game. They got to do better than that. But ultimately, they need to stay healthy, play good defense, and come out with a dub. And ultimately, we'll see. Saturday's a big day for both the AFC, and you got the 7 seed debate tomorrow. The Chargers and the Broncos to see who maybe the Bills play in the first round. The next day and on Saturday, you have who they could match up against, whether it's the Steelers or the Ravens, and then you have obviously the Chiefs and the Texans. There's a lot to be happening before the Bills game, so we'll see how that all plays an experience into this game. Time for some score predictions before we get on out of here. We're going to bring in Pat here for this segment to producer Pat to talk about score predictions and go from there. And we will bring up Pat. Pat, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. How about you guys?
We're good. We're going to start with Kevin, and then we're going to go to Pat, back up to myself. Score predictions time. Kevin, what do you got?
I have a very similar score to what Matt said. I have Buffalo winning 37-13. I don't think it's going to be a perfect game like we saw in the playoffs, to Matt's point. I mean, as much as, well, I guess maybe we should talk about that for a sec. The Bills have scored 40-plus points 2 weeks in a row. So ideally, you would think that if they could do that against the Rams and the Lions, that they could do that against the Patriots. But is it going to get so out of hand so early that maybe they just pull the starters and it's going to be ball cap Josh Allen and he's not going to have to play to the very last tick of the game? And I know it might sound crazy to think, wow, you're that confident. And I don't want to get too confident, because look what happened last year when Mac Jones beat the Bills. And you're looking at, what was the score? Like 29-25. And you're like, how the heck did you lose
Went
to
on
that
game-winning
team?
drive to Gesicki.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't want to get too confident, especially because, I talked about the Brady days. And I tweeted a stat earlier today. Maybe, Pat, you could pull it up while we're going through some of our score predictions here. But
yeah,
it was just abysmal. Maybe we don't need to be reminded, but the Bills' record versus the Bills during our childhoods were terrible. And now you're starting to see it flipped. The Bills are 7-2 against New England ever since 2020. When Brady was in New England, I believe that it was a combined record of 35-5. That was New England's record against Buffalo. So maybe I should just cool it a little bit, because we're still not up to that threshold. We're still not, Tom Brady's level. But at the same time, I just feel very, very confident about this game. And to your previous point, Kevin, the fact that Drake May has never had to wear long sleeves during a football game, that's never a good sign, especially when you're coming to Buffalo to play against Sean McDermott's defense. They're going to eat him up alive.
Yeah, we'll see. That's a big game for him. And the one thing that scares me is Mayo. And Pat, let's hear about your prediction, and we'll get into mine. What do you got?
Yeah, no, I do think that the Bills do just enough to keep that 30-point streak alive. And I think, like you said, Kevin, this will be a game where the Bills try to run the ball and stay healthy and rely more on their defense than trying to put up 40 points.
Yeah.
So I do have Buffalo winning this game 31-13.
Okay. Yeah, everyone's around a similar type of atmosphere, and we'll wrap up with what I'm thinking is, I never like to hear a coach on the maybe getting fired. There's no better time to try to show that you should keep your job than beating a Josh Allen led team and say, like, I went to Buffalo with an underman team. There's no better man for the job than me. Like, I can go there and win when it matters. Those are the kind of things that scare me a little bit. We'll see in 2 weeks. Hopefully, I think they could play a little bit more spoiler in Boston, in the New England area, if the Bills have the 1 seed on the line at that point, or the Bills are resting their starters. But I think that they could play a little bit more spoiler there. That could be scary. And the Bills have already seen him. They can make their adjustments. We have to travel with a lot on the line at that point. So that game's a little scary to me. We'll see where they're at in a couple of weeks, especially so quickly. But in this game, they're coming here. It's cold. He hasn't played in the cold. He's not used to it. We've seen how that goes. Sean McDermott's really good against rookie quarterbacks. I don't know. So I got the Bills just hitting the 30 mark. I got it going 30-17. That's something that have jumped out to me. And I think there's going to be a stretch in this game where it's going to be a little bit closer than Bills fans want. And we'll see if Josh Allen's finally able to go to ball cap and late in the game. But I think he's going to have to put on a performance into the fourth quarter. And I don't know, outside of a blowout, the Bills are going to want Josh Allen to continue to produce as long as it's ready to help the Bills' case. Because Josh Allen's right there with records, and although teams don't care, I mean, some of the stuff matters to the players, it matters to the team. So as long as they're being safe and cautious, I do think the Bills will probably press it a little bit offensively in this game. And I think that the Bills will get an extra possession or two from the McDermott defense. Well, there you have it. We have our score predictions. We really appreciate everybody being on here for 90 minutes. Thank you so much to our show sponsors. Thank you again to the Summit Center and Dave Dengler and Larson-Timko. To our show sponsors, thank you so much for the Summit Center and for some of the best autism care in Western New York. Please make sure you check out the Summit Center.
That is right. And I want to finish with this. I want to ask you guys this question for our final takeaway segment. Can the Bills still get the 1 seed? Is it still doable? I thought it really was after I saw that Patrick Mahomes had that ankle injury, but sure enough, he's back at practice as a full participant. But if you look at the schedules here, this is what Kansas City is dealing with. So they're playing against Houston on Saturday, then at Pittsburgh on Christmas Day, and then they finish at Denver. Now, based on how they've played this season, they really could lose all 3 of those games. But since they are the luckiest team that I've ever seen, they will probably find a way to win. But they really could drop those games. And when you look at the Bills' schedule, I mean, I know we all know it, but just to reiterate here, home against New England, home against the Jets, and then at New England, that could be 3 easy wins. Again, could be. We know that these could be trap games, and especially if seeding isn't on the line, the Bills can rest their starters. But I don't know. Do you guys think that the Bills can come back from this 2-game deficit and still regain? Well, I guess they never had in the first place, but do you think that they can still have the 1 seed, have home field advantage of the playoffs, and get that extra week of rest going into the playoffs?
No, yeah, me personally, I believe that they can. If Kansas City loses to Houston this Saturday, I think if Kansas City beats Houston, it's not likely to see Kansas City lose back-to-back games. So I think it all depends on this upcoming game against Houston.
I don't think they can lose back-to-back games either. I think there's a very limited chance. I'm almost at like under 5%. I don't think there's a much realistic chance. Here's why. Denver may be playing the end of the year, actually the one resting their players. They can't already get the division. They're going to want to rest their players going into the wild card round. I don't believe any of their starters will play in that game. They could have the 6 seed wrapped up pretty much as early as tomorrow with a W against the Chargers. They'll be 2 games up. They really, and then they lost to Baltimore. So they really don't have anywhere to go. So they're going to utilize that bye week, which is unfortunate for the team that has to play them because Denver is going to be able to rest players going into their wild card game against the 3 seed if they are able to take care of the Chargers tomorrow. So that's another negative to drop into the 3 seed. So I don't really think there's much hope. I do think that the Chiefs will do just enough. I do think they'll go 2-1 in that stretch. I think they'll do just enough to make sure beating the Texans is going to be fairly enough. And if they lose to the Steelers and absolutely need to beat the Broncos in the last, they will do that, especially against a Broncos team that will officially, in most scenarios, be playing for nothing. So unfortunately, I don't see a path. Too much luck has gone their way. I think it's the Chiefs, the number 1. The Bills commanding position of number 2. And there's a world where next week you may be like, depending on how things go, the Chiefs beating the Steelers can clinch you the 2. That has some intrinsic value so that you can go into week 18 with your bye week too. So it's going to be difficult. If they beat the Texans, I don't know for sure that you can assume that they can go and lose back-to-back games to end the season to lose the 1 seed. It's all rides on this week. If they win this, I think it's a wrap. And you may even be rooting for them against the Steelers just to make sure that you cap the 2 and have no issues. So, and then able to rest week 18, which is just as important. So to me, I think worst case scenario is trying to chase the 1, getting some injuries week 18 against this Patriots team, and the Chiefs just going blow out the backup Broncos because they're already the 6 seed.
Yeah, I can see that. So I think the key thing is if Houston can beat Kansas City this week, and then we will take it from there, see if Pittsburgh can get the win. Because, again, these are very winnable games for the Bills, but that's a good point, Kevin, because if they can rest their starters week 18, that is almost the equivalent of it. I know it's not as good as a 1 seed, but, you got to take what you can get in that scenario because you do not want to go into the playoffs with Terrell Bernard, Rasul Douglas.
Not again.
Yeah, exactly. I don't need to go through the whole list because there were so many last year, but
I'll say the Chargers game's big tomorrow. If you want to care about this scenario and are like all in on the 1 seed, root for the Chargers because that really does put some stress on the Broncos to go ahead and need to win more. So the best thing to start off the scenario, to me, really, it would root for the Chargers tomorrow. It does also knocks out the Bengals. It does knock out the Dolphins. Not that there really is a ton of chance there. Get them out of here though. And really does put some stress on the Broncos down the stretch rather than them being able to relax and not care about the Chiefs game. So that's the starting point to all this, is hopefully a Chargers win and then a Texans win. And then we can talk. But if it goes the other way, I don't think there's any chance.
So go Chargers, go Texans, and go Bills.
Yep. All right. Well, from the Going Deep Buffalo show, Kevin, Pat, and Kevin, we appreciate everybody. Show sponsor Summit and Larson-Timko. We'll catch you guys here on the flip side. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And hopefully we'll come back and maybe have some more 1 seed talk if things go the Bills' way. If not, the Bills will be in position to lock up the 2 seed. And we'll talk about that too. So we'll catch you guys next week.